Hi guys, my name is Vanessa and I'm coming to you from the garden here in my Central Texas backyard. Today I'm going to show you how to grow your very own sweet potatoes from a grocery store sweet potato all the way to harvest and curing. If you haven't yet, smash that like button below and subscribe to the channel so we can grow together. First, it's important to know, how does a sweet potato even grow? Well, it grows from a slip, that is a vine that is produced off of a very mature sweet potato. We then take that vine, get some roots growing on it, whether that's in soil or in some nutrient solution or water, and we plant that in shallow soil, and each slip can produce 6 to 10 sweet potatoes off of that one slip. And one sweet potato can actually produce an unlimited amount of slips until there's no moisture left in the potato, so the possibilities are endless. So when should you start your sweet potato slips? Well, this depends on how long your growing season is. As gardeners, we calculate our growing season from your last average frost date, usually in early spring for most southerners, to your first killing frost, which usually happens in late fall, early winter for most southern gardens. So knowing what these dates are for your specific area is actually really important for many things beyond growing sweet potatoes. So I'm adding a link in the description of this video below, which will link you to the Farmer's Almanac site, where you can type in your zip code and figure out, based on your closest weather station to your area, what your average first and last frost dates are. If you want to get a head start on your sweet potato slip should typically be started about 6 weeks before your last average frost date. Some will say 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes those colder night temps stick around a little bit even after your last average frost date in the spring, and sweet potatoes are a heat-loving vegetable. So let's pick out some sweet potatoes from my local Whole Foods. This is the organic section, and I went home with some purple sweet potatoes, some garnet yams, Japanese sweet potatoes, and some white sweet potatoes. I had them growing underneath a low-quality grow light set at 14 hours on top of a heating mat in a 10 by 20 tray, with the sweet potatoes just halfway sitting into potting soil, and I keep them wet just by misting the top of the sweet potato and the surrounding soil. If your seed starting setup is warm enough, you may not need to do the heating mat. I just find in January, February timeframe, it's a little chilly where my area is, so this is very helpful. Now, you may run into sometimes having a sweet potato that's doing fine and then a sweet potato that does not want to trigger and start growing slips. You can trick this sweet potato by putting it into a completely dark, hot area, and it might start growing slips for you. So because sweet potatoes thrive in warm weather, they need about 120 days to reach maturity of warm weather. Getting a head start sometimes is just a formality unless you have a shorter growing season, and then it is absolutely essential to get a head start on your sweet potato slips. So for my area in Texas, my growing season starts March 20th, and it's pretty consistent. Now, this is just an average, and averages have a little bit of wiggle room, but March 20th is when I can start sowing things that are non-frost tolerant plants. My first killing frost is typically in November, around Thanksgiving, usually the week before Thanksgiving. This last year we had a killing frost on Halloween, but this means that I typically have a growing season that's 9 months or 270 days long, which is a long growing season. But we like to say that it's segmented by an extremely hot time frame of about 3 months, from mid-May to mid to late September. So based on my garden plan each year, I will start a round of sweet potato slips early in January to February and just let them grow and let them be very mature well in advance, in case the sweet potatoes take a little bit longer to first start giving me slips. And I will transplant out those slips within a couple weeks of my last average frost date. That is usually around early April. So we're looking for nighttime average temps of about 50 degrees in order to avoid the sweet potato slips stalling, going into a little bit of shock, or just having extremely slow growth when you could have just kept them ready on the sweet potato plant or rooted in water while you're waiting for temps to get better. The nighttime temps are some of the most important things for us to watch as gardeners when we're planting annual vegetables that are a little more sensitive to the different changes in temperatures, and we're looking for what extreme temperatures are these plants having to survive. For sweet potatoes, they really don't love being below 50 degrees. If they're an established plant, they may still do okay, but the young slips need a good head start, and having a good head start creates no childhood trauma for your plants, so you have healthy teenagers that won't be giving you any grief in the garden. So these guys are starting to take off. These are the garnet yams. This is the one that was doing really well in the first video. And then you can see this guy has really taken off. They're fully rooted into the solution, like I cannot separate them. So we'll be popping off these and putting them in a cup of water with a little nutrient solution. So we're gonna take one of these, and you literally just snap it off right at the base and remove just the bottom couple leaves. And then place it in a jar of water and we'll add a little nutrient solution. These will produce roots really quickly and they will be ready to go within the next 2 weeks. When July comes around in my garden, typically that's when some spring veggies are ready to be pulled because it's just getting too hot. This tends to leave me with some open spots. And in Texas, there is a pretty small list of things that will grow really well from July through September, sweet potatoes being one of those things. So around that time, I usually still have sweet potatoes sitting in soil, and I have moved them outside to just grow in the soil and keep growing their slips, and I just make sure that they stay watered. The cool thing about growing it like this is they already have roots on a lot of the slips. So what is the best kind of soil to grow sweet potatoes in? Well, you're looking for soil that is not super high in organic matter. You're looking for a chocolate loam, silty loam, something that will hold moisture but will also drain really well. I use a mixture of compost, old potting soil that's in my grow bags or whatever I have on hand, and topsoil because topsoil usually has some sand mixed into it. And I like to add a little bit of azomite and green sand as minerals to help to not add too much organic matter, which won't promote too much leafy green growth and give you some nice sized tubers. But don't get stressed about being too technical. Just use sort of crappy soil and you're going to do just fine because that's what I did. So if I end up having any space in my garden that I feel like a sweet potato would grow well in, I will typically throw out the last of my sweet potato slips in a succession sowing that time of year. This is the bed that you saw me starting earlier by mixing in some of the compost and some topsoil, and I'm planting sprouted Yukon Gold potatoes on Valentine's Day because that's when we plant them here in Texas. I harvested them in early May. I could have waited a little bit longer and still gotten sweet potato slips in, but I got a pretty good harvest, and I'm putting these sweet potato slips in actually pretty shallow. As you can see, I'm plugging them in only about 2 to 3 inches into the soil like I did earlier. These are not spaced out properly, so do as I say and not as I do, and shoot for about 2 feet of spacing between the sweet potatoes so that you can allow for all those tubers to form properly. So my first round of sweet potatoes, I'm typically harvesting mid-August, and that was planted around early April. And if I do a second sowing of sweet potatoes that is used a bit more like a cover crop, I am usually harvesting that by early October. Some people like to just wait and have their sweet potatoes planted outside when it is warmer, so they are usually growing them around the second succession sowing time frame that I'm talking about. And then they will just let those plants go until the first killing frost, and then they will harvest them. If you have an area that can be taken up for that many months and it's not going to hurt the overall garden plan and space that you have, it's a really hands-off way to be growing sweet potatoes. Sweet potato vines have edible spinach-like leaves that are very palatable, they're very tender, and they don't get bitter in really high heat temps. So growing sweet potatoes in your garden in the South over the summertime is actually a great way to still have a high in vitamin C leafy green that is edible and is pretty palatable if you cook it or throw it in a smoothie. If you let the leaves and vines sprawl on the ground, they will root in other places, so they can be a little difficult to remove at the end of the season, but they also create a really nice ground cover. And if your grass is dead at a certain point in the year, this can actually really help you have a lower ambient temp in the garden. And it's an awesome green compost addition when everything else is dead. It's time to harvest some sweet potatoes. This area I'm not sure about. I already harvested about 1.8 pounds as a scratch test, and that was off of 2 slips, which is not great yield. This is a new area. As a reminder, this is what this area looked like just a few months ago. So it was very shallow. It's on very poor irrigation. I really put in minimal inputs, so let's see how much output we can get. Yeah, this area is just odd. So I've never seen a sweet potato vine do that. These are all edible roots, technically. If you can see how much scraggliness is on these, probably a lack of water, lack of moisture. Here we go. Got a few more. And now it's time to do a test dig at the other end of the garden to see if these sweet potatoes are ready, and it looks like they are. Do you see this? It's heavy. Look at this. We're full again. Oh my goodness. I also want to show you guys what I think is root knot nematodes, but we'll see. And root knot nematodes are a parasite, and you can see the nodules where there are no sweet potatoes. That's root knot nematodes. That's bad news bears. I'm just gonna have to solarize this bed. I'll be cutting back all these vines and tarping this bed. Oh my God, guys, there's more. I think I girl bossed too close to the sun. Okay, my back is literally hurting because my root apron is so full. This is what was in here, keeping a bed full from February all the way through the summer. It's such an easy swap out. It was perfect because I harvested potatoes right as it warmed up, and then it was perfectly timed for sweet potatoes. Now, I don't want to speak too soon, but the fact that I'm able to dig around in my sweet potatoes in the middle of the summer in Texas, and I haven't gotten stung once by a fire ant, is a testament to the beneficial nematodes that I sprayed in the spring that were specifically used to target reducing fire ant populations, guys. Oh, it's amazing what beneficial insects can provide for us. I'll be pretty happy if I hit 50 pounds. Well, we harvested our first 2 beds of sweet potatoes. Looky there. Oh man, this is heavy. So here's the coolest thing about this apron. And I have a discount code for you guys. But the coolest thing is you just take this here and here. Don't forget your pruners. Here and here. And just boom. Done. Just like that. We're gonna hand lift this and just, we're gonna do an estimate. Yeah, I don't think I'm super off by 30 pounds. I think that's probably pretty accurate. So let's test this. This bucket weighs 2 pounds. This is our final harvest just of these 2 beds. I got more rounds of beds to go. And that's coming in at 31 pounds of sweet potatoes. So we started our sweet potatoes from grocery store slip. We grew them for 120 days. We used them as a beautiful ground cover, ate their leaves throughout the summer season. Now it's time to cure these 31 pounds of sweet potatoes and eat them for the next few months because it's gonna take us a while. This isn't even the end of the harvest. Sweet potatoes are a little different than regular potatoes, although both of them should be cured. When we are curing a sweet potato, we're actually curing it with high heat and humidity. Now, I found the easiest way to do this is to make a mock greenhouse, and you want to make sure you don't put them in complete darkness so they don't produce slips again. So putting them in plastic bags in a warm area to keep them around 85 degrees with a 90 to 95% humidity. I like to throw in a damp towel regularly with them over this period of a week and just make sure that they get sunlight and they're not in the dark. Sweet potatoes naturally have sugars that develop after they are harvested, and it can take a few weeks for those to settle. So you can eat a sweet potato straight out of the ground, but it may not be reminiscent of sweet potatoes that you have eaten from the grocery store in the past. So when I'm harvesting my second round of sweet potatoes, or if I have sweet potatoes that I have just planted in July, and I'm harvesting those sweet potatoes in early October, that gives me perfectly 6 weeks for them to initially cure and then let their sugars settle so that we can have them for our first holiday dinner. I'm adding on the screen a list of the varieties that I feel like grew best for me this year, and remember, these are varieties that you might be able to find at a grocery store near you, so you can start them soon. I hope this video has inspired you to grow your own sweet potatoes in your southern garden, because it's early January right now as I stand here, and that is the perfect time to consider getting sweet potato slips going. Whether you grow them as a cover crop or eat their leafy greens through the summertime to supplement what you have coming out of your garden, or as a calorie crop that can be stored for months on end, you just can't go wrong with adding this vegetable to your garden. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and remember, if you never grow, you'll never know.